Hi everyone. Today we are going to look at the doctrine of impassibility. As seen in this slide, that this doctrine is affirmed by the various Protestant confessions that God is without passions. Now, what do we mean when we say God is without passions? Well, Matthew Barrett has helpfully given us a good definition in his glossary. He says that God does not experience emotional change in any way. He does not suffer. God does not merely choose to be impassible. Impassibility is intrinsic to his very being. Impassibility is a necessary implication of his immutability. So there are a few points here for us to take note that number one, God cannot experience emotional changes of state due to his relationship to and interaction with human beings and the created order. Hence, God cannot be affected by us, and he is not reactive toward us. And at the same time, he is not victim of negative and sinful passions. And impassibility does not mean that God is inert or static, as if he cannot love. To understand impassibility better, we need to use the categories of a pure act and passive potency. Now, pure act only applies to God, and it shows that God is being, not becoming, and there is no potential in God at all. What that means is that God is eternally and maximum in loving, sympathetic, compassionate with people, eternally and maximally displeased with sin, and so on. And God's love cannot increase or decrease. It's already perfect. Whereas for passive potency, it only applies to God's creatures. God's creatures like us, we are always becoming, not being. We can realize our potentials by becoming better through improvements. Our love can increase or decrease for better or for worse. To give you an example, I have the potential to become a doctor or an engineer, or to become a father or a grandfather. So you see that there's always potential in us for us to accomplish something or to be something uh, in the future. But God is not like that. God is always who He is. He is being. He cannot become something else. Hence, there is no potential in God. Now, the question is, if God is impassible, then how can God sympathize with us? Well, the answer to this question is that God does not sympathize with us in the sense of being reactive and responsive to us in time, but rather God sympathizes with us with maximum sympathy from eternity and not becoming sympathetic with us in time, and this preserves his divine immutability. Properly speaking, we can say that all of God's acts are from eternity, but we feel the effects of his actions in time and history. Now, take this for example. If I'm walking down on the street and suddenly I got into an accident, I fell down, I got injured, uh, God does not sympathize with me in the sense that, oh, he just realized I have accidentally injured myself, and then he said, oh dear, what happened to you? I feel so sorry for you. Now, that is not how God sympathizes for us, but rather God has already sympathized with us from eternity, right? He does not respond to us in real time as if he has changed. To make this clear, impassibility means creatures cannot cause God to suffer in time, and God cannot be affected by us in time, because God is a timeless being. And so we cannot make God level up or level down. We cannot make him become better or worse. Now, how can we get impassibility from the Bible? Well, the Bible doesn't explicitly give us the doctrine of impassibility, and if you ask any of the biblical authors, they might not even be aware of this doctrine. But we can get the doctrine of impassibility using the method of GNC inference from the attributes of immutability and perfection. Take, for example, immutability. God does not change in himself, he cannot change in time, God does not flow with time. So if we can make God to respond to us, and if God can experience change of emotions in time, that would contradict his attributes of immutability. So attributes of immutability implies that God is impassible. And as for the attributes of perfection, we know that God is already perfect. If God can change, right, and go through change of emotions or in change in his love for us, then any change in God actually means God has either improved or deteriorate, and that takes away his perfection. So his perfection also implies that he is impassible, and this shows that God is being, not becoming. The next question to look at is, how can God be impassible if our Lord Jesus Christ himself experienced change in emotions? Now we can resolve that by saying, well, Christ is impassible and passible. According to his divine nature, he is uncreated, he is immutable, and he is impassible. According to his human nature is created, mutable, and passible. So Christ is passible as a man and impassible as God. So in principle, the properties are predicated of the person according to the nature in which they occur. For example, Christ is omnipotent according to his divine nature, but when he gets hungry, tired, he experiences emotional changes and suffers. These are according to his human nature. So that's it. I hope you have a clearer and better idea of what the doctrine of impassibility is all about. Thank you.